Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, which is the latest in a series of events held by the IHI office to demonstrate the results and impacts of the projects that we fund. My name is Colin Carroll, and I am a scientific project manager at IHI, and I focus on projects in digital health and health data. In this webinar, we are putting the spotlight on the PharmaLedger project, which aimed to use blockchain technologies to solve some of the problems we have in healthcare today. I'm delighted to be joined by three excellent speakers from the project who are, next slide, who are firstly going to go through some of the challenges in healthcare that the project was designed to address. And then they will describe how they address these challenges. And this will be illustrated by a couple of use cases, as you can see on the agenda here, on electronic product information and electronic consent for clinical trials. And finally, we will hear about the next steps, how the consortium aims to scale their results to have as broad an impact as possible. Before I introduce the three speakers, let me just go through a couple of housekeeping matters. Firstly, we want this to be a very interactive session. So although your microphones are muted and will remain muted throughout the webinar, we would ask you to put any questions you may have in the chat, and we will aim to address them throughout the webinar. We have 2 or 3 Q&A sessions when we'll be able to go through your questions. Secondly, the webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the IHI YouTube channel and website afterwards. And finally, just to say, although we have allocated 1.5 hours for this webinar, we do aim to finish a little sooner so you can go about your day. So with no further ado, I'll ask the three speakers to turn on their videos and I'll introduce them. So we have, first of all, Xenia Beltran from Universidad Politécnica de Madrid, who was the coordinator of the PharmaLedger project and working on the academic side of the consortium. We're also joined by Dan Fritz and Marco Cuomo. You can see them there together. Marco is from Novartis, and Dan is here representing the PharmaLedger Association. And obviously, I said we'll hear a little bit more about that towards the end of the webinar. So I'm going to hand over to them to present their project to you. And I think they're going to, as mentioned, kick off by discussing what the challenges were that PharmaLedger was set up to solve and why blockchain was a suitable technology to solve these problems. So I think Xenia and Marco, I'll hand over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Xenia Beltran, Head of Big Data and Life Supporting Technologies at Polytechnical University of Madrid, and I've been the coordinator of PharmaLedger project with Novartis as industry leader. First, we would like to thank all the people from the audience that have joined us today in this webinar, and also we would like to thank IHI for having PharmaLedger in the spotlight and showcase PharmaLedger. So we're going to talk a little bit of what's PharmaLedger, or what has been PharmaLedger, as it's just finished now in December, and we're still finishing and closing the project. So next, please. Next, please. PharmaLedger started over the challenge to solve a big problem, and this is the why of PharmaLedger. Currently, in the healthcare systems are not patient-centric. We have many data silos, fake medicines also going around, risk of cyber attacks, intermediaries which take the value, okay, from the end users and many of the participants or stakeholders in the value chain of the healthcare. And there is also a lot of lack of data provenance. This creates a lot of inefficiencies and waste. And next, please, this make us, okay, to really see, and actually we as applicants at that moment and the pharmas when put together the call, okay, to have the vision and go towards what we have called a digital trust ecosystem to accelerate value creation. And that means, okay, we through this project, we have taken advantage and opportunities to use open source software to empower patients and privacy through the different use case and applications built over the PharmaLedger platform. actually improve and enable secure healthcare and data sharing through all the stakeholders, support and provide a platform for open innovation and experimentations, okay, where different stakeholders coming from the academy to really big pharmas or as innovative SMEs, okay, we're working, increase efficiency in processes, and actually with the overall idea to improve health and safety in the healthcare environment. So next, please. So what's what's PharmaLedger or what's been PharmaLedger? PharmaLedger was sponsored by IMO, no IHI, as well as by the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Association, known as EPFIA. It has been a 3-year project which started in January 2020, and our main aim was to have and to generate the vision to benefit the entire healthcare ecosystem, growing from the pharma's manufacturing to the patients. For this project, we put together a consortium of 29 public and private entities, including global pharmaceuticals companies, technical partners, universities, and research organizations. Actually, the idea is to get for whom and by who. Okay, it's by all these stakeholders, and actually, as commented before, to take the opportunities, okay, to not only empower patients but also to create this kind of efficiency. For this, what we created is a blockchain-based platform, okay, with reference use cases or applications in the tops, okay, that were going from the supply chain to the clinical trials, and we, at the end of the project, have created a governance for sustainability and go after the project as the PLA, which are you going to listen later. Next, please. So what's our story? Our story started in 2018 when the pharmas, okay, led by Novartis, submitted a topic to the IHI. So we as applicants, SMEs and academic partners, okay, applied and submitted a proposal in that year, okay, and went through the stage evaluation and received a Christmas present where they said we were selected. So after that, we started to work as one consortium together with the pharma to submit for the second stage. Okay. In this, okay, we had a meeting in Madrid where we put all together and we put our roadmap together on how the project was going to be taken during the next following 3 years, okay, and launch our project in January of 2020. Next, please. Our roadmap, okay, was divided in 3 years, where the first year was dedicated, okay, to actually design and put the pillars of the project. For during those years, that time, okay, we actually went through the pharmas and led by the pharmas with the idea of what would be the best use cases to showcase and to support the platform that we were aiming to build. During the second stage of the project, which was mainly our second year, we dedicated to do all the developments and customize the developments for the use cases, okay? And actually then, with these developments, validate the whole technology and platform that we were putting together and actually implement the governance and operating model that we were creating for exploitation and go after the project. We dedicated little bit more than 1 year to do so, okay? With the idea that we all together wanted to have this expanded and actually taken and reaching, okay, further limits that the project as such. So we started the transition, okay, and not only that, okay, we actually made reality of the show cases and our demonstrators for all the use cases that we were putting together. Since the beginning, what we try to put together is that the consortium work, okay, with different activities, actually trying to see where the skills were best, okay, fitted, okay, in the different activities that we were having through the consortium and in our roadmap as such. Next, please. So we started the project as commented, okay, with putting the pillar and actually getting all the requirements. For this, okay, we had proposed, or we started with more than 88 potential use cases. And actually, okay, from there we got to 8 use cases that were the ones we developed. For this, we put in the front, okay, what were the needs of the markets, what were the needs of the pharmas that we were working with us, okay, and actually create the technical requirements and the mock-ups to actually build the demonstrators and the applications that we're going to have in this platform as such. We did all the technical requirements, we did all the developments that were needed as such. Our goal as a project, okay, was that under that one consortium, the 29 partners collaborated and created an agile and secure blockchain-enabled platform that support on the top of it in a decentralized manner and trustless healthcare solutions by nature, these use cases as such. So on one hand, okay, we work under at the beginning also and in this stage under a legal and ethical framework also to be compliant with current and envisioned standards and the use cases and to make sure that all the processes and all the developments were privacy enabled by design as such. On the other hand, we work and allow the security of the information, making that the data and the processes were linked together under the PharmaLedger platform services coupled with these sustainable visions. Next, please. Since the beginning, okay, what we wanted, okay, was that PharmaLedger from the start of the project, it was to be technology agnostic and remaining as neutral as possible to the blockchain technology selected by each use case. And we always wanted to remain technology neutral, and we expect to remain technology neutral as such. So we put together these 8 use cases that were selected, and we can see that they are linked and they can be shown as part of an upstream or downstream path of the healthcare value chain, depending on the stakeholder perspective. So in PharmaLedger, what we are doing is we're using blockchain to support the network of connected partners, okay, and to make it interoperable as such. So our second part of the project, let's say the second half of the project, was devoted to really go over these use cases that comprise clinical trial recruitment, clinical trial e-consent and the value chain of the clinical trials, the supply chain use case, finished good traceabilities, EPI electronic product information, which has become our flagship use case, okay, and it was selected as to be accelerated and the most advanced to have a fully demo on how we were working with our platform, under content fitting, okay, linked to the EPI product and medical devices and IoT personalized medicine, okay, which also work with from some prems. So actually in this area, okay, we also work in the sustainability, and just to say for that we have used blockchain to support this network, and right now Marco is going to talk about this, and it's my pleasure to turn over him to explain about how we have worked and our technical developments in the project as such. Marco.
Thank you, Xenia. My name is Marco Cuomo. I'm working for Novartis. I'm manager of Applied Technology Innovation Group, which means we try to bring in new technology in Novartis. And I'm responsible for blockchain. And in the PharmaLedger, I was the co-lead architect for the blockchain architecture or the infrastructure. But before we go deeper, I pick up what Xenia brought so far, is the 5 A's, how we define blockchain. So what is specific on blockchain? So the first A you see here on the left side is about managing assets. So when you hear blockchain or when you hear the internet or the web, it's often about information. When you talk about the blockchain, we talk about assets. Of course, the most famous asset is the cryptocurrencies with Bitcoin, for example. But from an enterprise point of view, we are more interested in these are our assets. The other thing is audit, very important in pharma or in other regulated industries. Everything you do has to be somehow protocoled or has to be in an audit trail or audit log. And blockchain is the perfect tool for that. So everything what you do on the blockchain is automatically basically logged, and you can trace it back to the beginning, which is very important for a lot of use cases in the pharma industry. Then with blockchain, you have also something what we call smart contracts. The smart contracts is basically something which allows you to put business logic on the blockchain. And with that, it means this business logic cannot be changed and will be executed no matter what happens. Another important element is with that is anonymization or the privacy. even if everything is transparent on the blockchain, you have to solve it in a way that you still protect the privacy, or GDPR, for example. And the most important thing is blockchain is a different technology. The other technologies, it's what we call all for one for all, means it is something you only can do in a team, in a group, in an ecosystem. Your own blockchain is not much, makes no sense, right? So this is what we define as the 5 A's for blockchain, to give you a little overview. Please, next slide. Now we deep a little bit deeper into the technology. So for the PharmaLedger, as we had in mind to build the digital trust ecosystem, so also simpler, the standard platform, a blockchain platform for the healthcare industry, we say we need to build an architecture which is technology neutral and which is also lasting for years, decades, and longer. So when you look at this picture here, we start from the bottom, and on the bottom you can see what we call the hierarchical blockchains. So what we said is we don't want one blockchain for all. So we want that every use case, every product, every project can pick their own blockchain technology, whether this is and network, means they can be private, can be hybrid, it can be completely public, it could be Ethereum, it could be Hyperledger, Polygon, whatever technology. So we are open, we completely technology neutral. And that gives us the flexibility also in a couple of years to jump on the newest technology, or get rid of a technology which proves that is not the right approach. So that's the bottom layer. That's what we call the hierarchical blockchains. Then on top of it, we have something what we call the OpenDSU middleware layer. So we needed something to say we have to abstract the blockchain, but giving enough features to the application developers that they can fulfill the requirements from the business. So basically, we use blockchain for anchoring, and we anchor all our data in the blockchain. I come later what that means, but for here now it's important. We have a middleware layer which abstracts the blockchain and gives a nice interface for the developers to do their job for the business. So what you can see here is the middle layer. We call it OpenDSU, which means data sharing units, and helps to for the business. Data are the real asset. Make sure that we can share them in an ecosystem in a safe way, and also having a nice interface. We call that API for developers, so that they can focus on solving the business problems rather than spending too much time in the technology. And on the top layer, you have what we call the application layer. Here is the typically development of an application with their normal web stack, so they can use their tools they are used to use. So this is basically our architecture. It gives all the freedom and flexibility for solving different use cases, but also be flexible for the future, whatever may come in the future. Okay, next slide. So you heard already that I used a couple of terms which are specific to the blockchain world. And here we deep a little bit deeper into the blockchain technology. First of all, we see the blockchain as a kind of a next generation for the internet. Means the web as we know it today is really focused on information, and the blockchain is adding a new feature. And I want to say really adding a new feature, which makes every transaction with value possible in an easy, or let's say in a good way. So here's some important terms which I want to jump on. The one is you often hear on-chain and off-chain. This is on the left side. What we mean with that is on-chain is everything that we put on the blockchain directly. The blockchain is not meant to hold a lot of data. It is like the general ledger of a company where you only put the important information and the rest you get from other systems. That's the same approach here. You put only the data on the blockchain, which are really meant to be on the blockchain, and not everything, because the blockchain cannot handle huge, it's not made for huge data. So that's what we call on-chain data. And the off-chain is then, of course, you put data outside the blockchain, but you link it. I use the term anchoring. You link it then to the blockchain so that it inherits, let's say, the properties of the blockchain. Jumping into the middle, smart contract is a specific software. It's an immutable software. That means you can be sure that no one is changing the software which is running on the blockchain. Here again, it can be not huge and big and complex software. It has to be the minimum, really the minimum business logic you want to have on the blockchain. Again, here, blockchain is not a platform for executing large programs. Crypto tokens. So everything you do on the blockchain, whether it's cryptocurrencies or products, can be not real products or real currency. It has to be a representation of that reality, which we call tokens. Crypto here again to be something which can be not manipulated or in another way changed. Then another thing is on the right side, zero knowledge proof. This is something very interesting. That's something where you want to prove something without revealing your data. For example, you have to prove that you are above 18 without revealing your birth date. And here also blockchain, or in this case, zero knowledge proof is a technology to do that. Sounds a little bit magic, but it can be very helpful for your data privacy. And another big thing is, which comes together with blockchain, which is a very good fit with blockchain, is what we call decentralized identity management. Again, here, decentralized identity management means you are in control of your identity and not another authority or company like Google or Facebook. So these are kind of technologies which are, let's say, specific to the blockchain and making it something special. Next slide. That's still with me, yes. This is a slide where we want to put your, where you can get more information about the use cases we have done in PharmaLedger. If you click or if you scan these QR codes, you will end up on a leaflet explaining these different use cases in more or products in more details. So you have on the top left the e-consent, medical devices or the IoT and personalized medicine. A very interesting project and use case for now where you have the QR code for more information, and the other one for clinical trial recruitment, also very interesting. And on the top, on the bottom, you have the supply chain use cases with 4 specific use cases, and each of them represented with a leaflet which you can scan here. So I think that's from my side. Next slide, please, and then I'm handing over to Dan Fritz. Oh, yeah, this is the part of PharmaLedger which we're closing here. I think the question and answers will be at the end, right? Or is here?
Oh, maybe we could pause now for any particular questions we have on the introduction. So first of all, thank you, Xenia. Thank you, Marco, for that introduction. And it's great to see the number of use cases that you've carried out. And I know we're going to hear in the next session a little bit more detail on 2 of them. But maybe before we go to that, there's a few questions that come through in the chat. And maybe this one, I don't know, perhaps for you, Marco. One is about how blockchain can be seen as not very environmentally friendly, i.e. it consumes a lot of electricity. How is that? How are you working that out in the PharmaLedger platform?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There are different blockchain technologies out, and there is one element is the so-called consensus algorithm. So how are all the blockchains on data status. And this is done with different ways. The one is called proof of work. And this is the one which is Bitcoin using. And this is very electricity high in consumption of electricity. But there are other technologies like proof of stake or others, which is Ethereum switch too. And in PharmaLedger, for the one project, which is the most advanced one, electronic product information, we use a technology which is proof of authority or something in this direction. It is called the Istanbul Protocol, which is not using a lot of electricity in basically just a normal server running. So yes, blockchain, some blockchain technology are very heavy in using electricity like Bitcoin, but there are other technologies with blockchain which completely avoid that. And in PharmaLedger, we picked protocols or technologies which are very very friendly to the environment.
Thank you. Great. There's a number of other questions coming through as well, but I'll maybe hold some of these until after the demonstrators. But there's one I was particularly interested in from an IMI, IHI point of view, in that we kind of see ourselves as a platform where all the different actors in healthcare that are needed to solve problems can come together. Now, you mentioned, I think it was on your first slide, that blockchain is a team sport, and you also mentioned as one of your 5As. Could you expand a little bit on how you took advantage of the platform offered by IMI to achieve what you've achieved?
Maybe I can start. I think in Novartis in 2016, 17, we started to think about blockchain, and very quickly we realized blockchain alone at home is not much fun, makes no sense. So then we were looking there must be already some organizations, consortia, which already are people together with the same interest. And that's why we came then to IMI, which was exactly what we're looking for. IMI is for us, at least from a digital point of view, something you can't do alone, where you need other partners. And IMI was already there and brought this platform. The only thing we had just to do is jump into it and using the infrastructure and yeah, starting with the blockchain project. It's my simple view from a technical point of view, but maybe Xenia and Dan, you have a more business-like view.
Yes, actually, I think on the applicant consortium side is the same. I mean this team sport approach and actually let's say a statement that we have been using during the project. Okay, it was brought by the industry, but also it was believed on our side, because as it happens in sports also, it could be beyond the fitness, let's say, and beyond your capabilities. And as Marco says, if you do things, okay, that you cannot do by yourself, it's been a great and it's a all these are great opportunities for not only the academic sector but also the SMEs. Okay, usually it's not easy to get innovations to be shown, okay, to large companies like pharmas, okay, and besides that, okay, being taken or adopted, okay, with this possibility. So actually, I think it creates a very nice experimentation approach, okay, which really allows, okay, on one side and compensate, okay, to accelerate somehow innovation, okay, and see how innovation can be accelerated like in big companies that sometimes are slow because this is not core part of their business, and on the other side to actually enable other, let's call them collectives, okay, it could be academics and small SMEs that might not have access to show, okay, these kind of innovations and make them a realities and see how it really can help, okay, a big sector as it is the healthcare sector.
Thank you, Xenia. Thank you, Marco. There's still a number of questions coming through, but I'm going to suggest we hold on these perhaps a little bit later on, because there's nothing better than seeing some use cases to how you've actually used this blockchain technology to deliver results which should have an impact on the healthcare system more generally. So why don't we go to the next session? And I think, Dan, you're going to kick off.
Thanks, Colm. Hi, everyone. My name's Dan Fritz. I was at the industry project leader for the most part of the PharmaLedger project, and have recently then taken on the role of executive director at the PharmaLedger Association, which we will get into a little bit more detail later in the webinar. But let's make one of these use cases a little bit more tangible. And so we've decided to focus on one supply chain and one clinical. I'll present the supply chain use case, which is EPI, and Xenia will show you the electronic consent. So next slide, please. So this is the first use case, and it's called EPI or e-leaflet. It's also known as e-pill, electronic product information leaflet. And the great thing about this use case is that it takes about 5 seconds for you to understand what it is. It's basically taking that package insert that's in every prescription medicine, many over-the-counter medicines, and providing the latest approved version of that information available on your smartphone. The way it is accessed is through a barcode that's on every pack, and then that resolves then to the manufacturer's data, and ensures that it's the latest approved version. This offers a lot of different benefits in terms of being able to navigate, and also in the future to add more graphics or even videos for medical devices. There's still concerns, not everybody has a smartphone. So we still need to address some of the questions around digital divide, ensure that it has the capability to print in the future. But this is a perfect blockchain use case because it has something that is worldwide, globally. There's something like 47 different initiatives, last counting, around a solution. And usually these are national solutions or regional solutions. What we're looking at is creating a solution which can be adopted in all markets. It has an app component, a distributed app or DApp component to it, but it's more about the back end. How is this data accessed, and how do we resolve the lookup to the manufacturer? Let's go into a little bit more detail around it. Next slide, please. So this is the demo that we're going to show you. I'm crossing my fingers. This is going to work. But basically, we in the initial pilot are using a QR code to access a light version of the app. It's not a native version of the app from the store, but something that's available over a web browser. And then this is instructing you to scan the 2D code or the two-dimensional code that's on the medicine pack. This is not a QR code. It's a standard GS1 code that's used basically in the majority of all markets globally for identification of the medicine. And the great thing about that, it has not only the product number, but a batch number, an expiry date, and a serial number. So with that amount of data, you can do a lot of different things. And then we access the product information and can drill down and navigate a little bit more. So I think what we'll do is do a quick demo of this, and I'm going to join the webinar with my phone. That's it. All right. And now I'm going to scan a QR code, which is this light version of the app. I think important thing to mention here, along with the 5 A's when we talked about anonymity, If I'm a patient and I'm scanning a specific medicine, I don't want anybody else to know really what disease I have or what medicine I'm taking. That is very private information, only for me and for my doctor. So the idea behind this is that no individual privacy relevant data is captured in this process when you are doing it. So after agreeing to the terms, we are instructed that we can scan the data matrix that is on the box, and we'll grant access to the camera, and we will be returned with the approved product information. So this, as you can see, I'll be able to navigate with it. And also in this case, I think we have a good example where, there may be usage instructions, how to use this. This may be a medical device. And that's maybe I needed to refresh my mind actually how to use this properly so I can make sure that I have the latest approved version of the medicine available. I'll try a different one. So I scan another barcode. And here we have an example of a medicine that is available in different languages. So my phone is set actually to a default English in the operating system, but the medicine pack is not available in English, so it's bringing me up different options in different languages. And we'll just use this to show basically how we would be able to support multilingual versions of the EPI in different scenarios. And so here, for those that would like to read it in French, you can have it there. Okay, so that was the demo. I will stop sharing, and I think we can go to the next slide, which so I think you're probably you've scanned QR codes and gotten menus and all sorts of things like this in the future. So what's the real benefit of adding blockchain to the EPI is the question. I mean, one, as I mentioned, it's a common solution which could be adopted on a global scale. Two, it provides a resolver with a low barrier for adoption for different manufacturers, right? We're talking about open source software. And it basically develops or establishes a platform upon which many other use cases can be implemented. So during the project, I also led the detecting falsified medicines use case. This is a big issue in low to medium income countries where a big portion of the medicine supply may be falsified, which impacts, of course, health, life, and the economics of the different countries. But with that scan, we're able to basically perform 7 different checks on the medicine pack, including checking using different authentication feature technologies to increase the confidence that it's actually a authentic product. And you could integrate adherence reminders, take it every Monday and Thursday. You could facilitate adverse event reporting for if you had to report side effects. We demonstrated the multi-language capability and also the ability to integrate videos or graphics in the future. I think that makes this is something that all patients would appreciate. So I think that's it for the EPI demo. And I think, with one more slide, I think we have next one, please. So this is, everybody's a patient. Really, what's the benefits for patients? Of course, being digital, it's easier to read, easier to navigate. It's using the same device that many are using for many other tasks. You don't have to have one app for this manufacturer's medicine and another app, but you can use a common app. Or as I mentioned at the beginning, this could also be integrated into maybe, there's already an established app in a specific country for health issues, and it can be integrated in there just as a back end. It has the latest information. It even has, when we scan it, it has the expiration date. So you might opt in to have a notification of when the medicine expires and how to dispose of it in an environmentally friendly manner. And I think we've talked about some of those other versions. So thanks for your attention on EPI. I'll be back with some more on PharmaLedger Association, but now over to Xenia for e-consent.
Thank you, Dan. Well, we don't have a demo like Dan, available due to the time constraints, let's say, okay, for this use case as such, but I'm going to put in the chat, okay, the link of the webinar that we did, okay, when we were finishing PharmaLedger, where we not only presented the use case, but we also presented the demo of this use case, so it's available there. The issue is that this use case put together three of the use cases, let's say, of the healthcare area that we have on the clinical area. At the beginning, it was put as a modular approach. Okay, so we developed three modules. One was e-consent. Okay, it's having the patient at the center. That means, okay, that the patient could consent for any process in a clinical trial. Okay, that their data was going to be used and how to be used and for what it was going to be used. Okay. Then we have like the whole clinical trial process, assuming that a patient was recruited, starting from there, okay, and actually, okay, how the different attentions and different appointments and the different process, okay, in a clinical trial go, and how the data is shared through all the stakeholders. That means, okay, when the sponsors come into place, when the trial subject, okay, is going through all the journey of the clinical trial, how the clinical research associates or CRAs interact, okay, so how they are authorized, the research organizations, the ethic committees, the clinical sites, how the consent goes, how the papers goes and the different documents, and how the data is shared through all the whole process. And actually, after that, okay, the consent model also was supported by what we call the IoT use case. And this IoT use case was turning and getting data, real world data from devices, okay, lifestyle devices. And the idea was to see how this data was integrated, okay, in the healthcare and in trials to actually support efficiency and how actually support data for that in the blockchain, and also how consent should be used in an electronic manner. Okay, we had a twofold approach because we had different countries. Okay, the people could have consents in papers and could be uploaded and could be used through all the processes, or also consent in an electronic manner could be used. Additionally, we developed the dynamic consent. That means, okay, that the persons or people that were recruited or were in the clinical trials could allow to use the secondary use of data for the research, okay, by researchers or investigators or principal investigators. So besides that, we also integrated all the PREMs and PROMs. That means patient reported experience and patient reported outcomes. And we integrated in the whole process. So with this use case, what we did, okay, is going from after recruitment in a clinical trial, the whole process and how data could be shared, including real world data, patient reported outcomes, and patient reported experience, and everything, okay, to be handled with transparency in immutable records, okay, with the participant consent and reconsenting or dynamic consent depending of the area. It would be immediately visible only by the permissioned users. That means from sponsors to clinical research associations or organizations, depending of the level that the data could be used, or data processors. We also show how to use security and how to ensure, okay, adherence and compliance to the not only to the processes, okay, but also to the clinical process in the clinical trial. We show how putting all these three modules together under one use case that was the clinical trial, how we could automate the full process using blockchain and how everything could be visible and permissioned depending on the patient consent by all the stakeholders, supported trust and consistency of information, and actually the patient, especially the patient ownership of the data. So the data was always under the management of the owner, and usually if the data is from the patient, how the patient could consent to be used and how to empower the patient to not only share the data, but actually to have the right not only to allow the use, but to be forgotten. And this was, as the data was not in the blockchain but hash, okay, as immutable records, okay. So actually we could also prove how the right to be forgotten could be used by the patient in this use case. And at the end, the idea in this case was validated. We had a technology validation with users, okay, in this, and we created not only an awareness and visibility, but actually show how efficiency could be used in this area. So I added also the link that you can see also how it works, how the application works on the top of the platform that Marco explained with the blockchain. This is what we also wanted to share. So next, please. We open then for questions and answers.
Great. Thank you, Xenia. Thank you, Dan, as well, for showcasing a couple of the use cases, two of many use cases that you have carried out. I'd say I particularly liked the multilingual feature of the electronic product information. I guess you know that one of the flagship policies in healthcare in the European Commission is the European Health Data Space, which is about facilitating cross-border healthcare. So say, for example, you're on a holiday in Greece and you pick up a prescription, it would be great to have the leaflet in a language of your choice, English, for example. And what you've done here could directly facilitate that. We've had a number of questions in the chat, and a couple of them have focused on the regulations regarding electronic product information. Obviously, it's a highly regulated, that document's highly regulated. So one of the questions was, why is blockchain an appropriate technology to manage this rather than what's already available? And the second was maybe what is the readiness of regulators to accept this type of technology? So maybe you could touch on those two.
I can start. It's a software product. I mean, it's also part as a software product as any other means. We have to go under a normal qualification and the validation process. Right now, really, right now, we are qualifying the software package, which is then deployed or distributed to the pharma companies, and the pharma companies then deploy it in their environment under their quality management system, which is then their qualification and later validation process. So there is no exception for us. We follow exactly the rules. It's a bit interesting because in this case, we try to bring a couple of pharma companies together and align on the same approach. But the regulation is for all pharma companies the same. How you do it is a little bit different, but this is what we do right now. So we qualify the software package, which is then distributed to the pharma companies, and the pharma companies deploy it, and they have then also to qualify and validate their process.
And maybe then from a regulatory standpoint, I mean the laws today say, you know, also for Europe, there's it's basically there has to be paper in the package. So I mean, what we're trying to do here is prove with blockchain also that this can be a trusted solution. So we've engaged a lot with internal regulatory affairs within the industry partners in this discussion, also with regional and national health authorities And what we're trying to do really, I mean, nobody's going to give a blanket approval for a blockchain solution before it's not, proven. So what we're really trying to do as a first step here is to demonstrate that it can work, that the actual model works, that we can deliver something as a united consortium that benefits not only the patients but the other stakeholders. Ultimately, this could also facilitate other steps in it, like update reviews and approvals as well. But the first strategy really is to make it a reality, and that is going to happen ideally next month with the release of the qualified product. That's the plan. And then with multiple pilots planned for later this year in different countries where we hope to prove the value of the solution.
Thanks, Dan. And I guess maybe referring back to the earlier question on energy use, I remember a previous presentation you gave was on the amount of waste that these paper leaflets produce per annum. And if we could implement this and maybe in some cases replace the paper leaflet, the saving for the environment would be quite large as well. So an added incentive to get that going. Maybe one for you, Xenia. There's a question about e-consent and in particular your solution. Would it be made available as a service that maybe smaller companies, biotechs, could use without having to have their own blockchain infrastructure?
Actually, yes. Okay, all is open software. Everything is being transferred, okay, to be used and reused through the PharmaLedger Association. The idea of what it was also that when we developed this, I mean, it was put together as one use case, but what we wanted to do is to do it modular. So actually, we foresee that maybe the whole solution didn't want to be put together all together for one organization. So actually, that's why there were like 3 use cases in one, and it's fully developed in a modular manner, and right now it's working, and it's available as part of the also the software that is providing the association as an open source.
Maybe I'll use that as a trigger to move on to the next session, which is on your sustainability solution, PharmaLedger Association. But before I do so, I mean, as by way of introduction, I think you mentioned this already, Dan, that while you've developed an app yourselves, it doesn't necessarily, your solution does not necessarily have to go through your app. It could be incorporated into other apps. For example, on my phone, and I don't have a fancy thing to share the screen, I've got an app where I can see my prescriptions provided by the Belgian Health Authority. And I'm just wondering if there's anyone from the Belgian Health Authority on the webinar, maybe how would they be able to incorporate your technology into their app, which would then make it easier for me to use it. So I know you're going to explain this in the next session, so I'll hand over to you and we can talk about the PharmaLedger Association, which is what's come after the project is finished.
Yeah. So thanks, Colm. I think it is worth being mentioned that I think we were very fortunate also with our public partners, that, in the planning process and everything for PharmaLedger, that we included the governance entity or post-project governance sustainability in the scope of the project. Because this was, we all knew this is, governance of a blockchain solution is super important for its success in the long term. So we had some good foresight, I think, in planning to do that. Originally, we called the project proposal Blockchain-Enabled Healthcare. As we went on this journey, we realized it's not, about starting with blockchain or with a technology. It is more about starting with an ecosystem, independent actors sharing common digital products for mutual benefit. So we moved away from blockchain-enabled healthcare to digital trust ecosystem. And the trust part is that it's underpinned then with some cryptography. So let me walk you through. All of this information is also available at pharmaledger.org. So you can find it there, but let me run through these slides and touch on some high points for you. So next slide, please. This is really trying to explain a little bit behind the concept of the digital trust ecosystem, which is what we think, it becomes the way that like-minded organizations can come together to solve problems that they cannot solve on their own. And we know, I mean, the issues and the complexity of healthcare is huge, and it's almost impossible to make changes here that don't take a long time or add additional complexity. So what we're trying to do here is to create an umbrella with the PharmaLedger Association where the diverse set of stakeholders can come together and develop, co-create these solutions, initially EPI in the strategy, and then use them for mutual benefits in the ecosystem going forward. So that's a little bit more about this concept of digital trust ecosystem, or DTE, which is really embedded in the whole purpose and the mission of the PharmaLedger Association. So next slide. We think what we in the project, we had a general assembly, we had a company with 120,000 employees, we had a company with 12 employees. Everybody got one vote. There was accepted diversity there with academia, healthcare providers, industry, technology companies, patient organizations. I think everybody developed an appreciation for this diversity, that it brings better solutions, but that it's basically also benefiting all of us who are all patients. So having a clear focus, why is healthcare here? For patients. That's why it exists. So having that clear focus is really number one. We are led by ourselves. That's the idea behind ecosystem leadership, that representatives are driving this, not some external party or other solution provider, not for profit. So not in it for stockholder returns or things like this. We do want to reinvest funding in new use cases like the e-consent and many others that we think will come in the future. But I think the not-for-profit helps with the trust aspect. We don't want to have any technology lock-in. We want to be neutral. We don't want to create a new central authority that defeats the whole purpose of decentralization. And we want, I think Marco mentioned open source there as well, so that everybody can also increase trust through the code, and transparency in our decision-making, governance and actions is also necessary for building this trust aspect as well. So those are some of the key values. Those are embedded in our bylaws, and I think have come with us with the whole project, and I think are need to be or worth being mentioned today. Okay, next slide. So I think Xenia presented a similar version of this slide before, which shows the different PharmaLedger use cases in a kind of a value chain way. Here, this is just calling out that the strategy is to really to release this first product, EPI, to the market, to prove that the whole model works, that we can work together, that we can deliver a qualified product. So that is really just kind of behind the strategy. We think that when and if EPI proves itself, then we will get a lot more people that are aware and believe in the power or the possibility that that the technology presents going forward. Next slide. So just quickly, what do we want to do? We've mentioned we want to launch EPI in the first quarter. As that is successful, we'd like to add the detecting falsified medicines capability onto that. It's basically, the same app. It's building on the same functionality. We are implementing the governance of PharmaLedger Association now. Actually, we have our first big annual general meeting tomorrow with 19 members. And so that's going to address things like the overall strategy for the association, the budget, the operating plan. And so this is actually going to, put us on a sound foundation for the direction and the focus and the priorities that we have in the future. And in addition to that, for the remainder of the year, we'd like to attract new members, retain the existing members. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we'd love to have a discussion with you. So next slide. The strategy is going to be looking at a 5-year roadmap, and so this is what is currently being discussed. A lot depends upon how quickly EPI can become mature, and how much resources the association has to reinvest in other use cases. But the idea is that, over time, we're launching new use cases that members can bring new ideas, or that we can leverage existing initiatives that are out there and bring them under the PharmaLedger Association umbrella. Next slide. So what's in it for me? I think from my perspective, Marco and I, at least from a Novartis perspective, we've been in a journey of learning, and this is something that is truly takes some time and a different thought process. It's ultimately about a paradigm shift that says, I can achieve more and do more with others by engaging with others than I can on my own. So that's the accelerated learning, bringing the voice to the table, appreciating the diversity of opinions and perspectives. I think one of the biggest benefits, and we saw this with the PharmaLedger project, was the ability to pool resources and risk. Any one of these projects on their own maybe cost millions, but if we bring together our combined efforts, then it becomes a lot more feasible for everybody to participate. So that's some of the benefits highlighted. So I think we can move to the next one. It's important to mention it's not just about these new products like EPI that would be launched. We want to continue the exact kind of capability that we had in the project with new use cases. So we will have a lab, an innovation lab, that continues to develop these ideas to demonstrators, proves the value, and then prepares them for graduation or launch to the market. And those could be projects that are defined within the strategy, or it could be projects that somebody proposes along with some resources to prioritize. And as long as it's in line with the purpose of the association, then we would support it. So the innovation with PharmaLedger continues going forward. Next slide. So how does PharmaLedger actually get its funding? So we're not getting anything from the European Union yet. Maybe IHI projects in the future will be a great way for us to continue that kind of innovation activities. At the current time, we have different membership classes, and it's there's a standard fee, or if there's public partners, academia, or patient organizations, they pay no fee. They have enough problems keeping enough resources in their organizations but we see the value in having them join. So there should be a way or a method for every entity that is a part or involved in healthcare to join and get engaged. And next slide. I think we are inclusive. We don't want to be a club. So there's many other actors, stakeholders who we would like to reach out, engage with more. I mean, we had 30 members in PharmaLedger, but we didn't have, everybody represented. It's really very dependent upon the different use cases about who should get engaged or involved. And so in the future, we want this list to grow and to be an inclusive association. Last slide is just what I started with. If you're interested to learn more, don't hesitate. Please reach out to us at pharmaledger.org, and we'd be happy to continue the conversation. So thanks very much for your attention. Back over to Cole.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks very much. It's great to see that you were really thinking ahead, even while the project was still ongoing, thinking to what was going to come after to ensure that the results could be built on and sustained. It's something that we really want to see. And we've actually had a question on how you manage this transition from a project mindset to more towards a sustainability solution mindset. And the question is, did IMI support your sustainability plan? Did a new legal entity become part of the project during the transition? I can answer this already. Yes, you set up a legal entity and it managed to join the project towards the end, so that some of the work that was done was in tandem with under the IMI funding. I just want a couple of questions myself before I go back to the floor. The first one was you on one of your slides, and you mentioned previously the importance of the endorsement from the pharmaceutical companies you had in the project. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit. Why is this endorsement so important, and what does it mean for the PharmaLedger Association, and particularly if an external organization is wondering whether to join or not, why should this encourage them to do so?
I mean, I can take a stab. I think that as with the PharmaLedger project itself, there's a certain degree of awareness and support for digital transformation and innovation, a recognition that there's these problems that cannot be solved on their own. So from a strategic perspective, there's buy-in to the concept of working together to get, to address these problems. It's still not, there's still a lot of work to be done in the industry organizations, because they are very large and have a lot of different departments, functions, roles, responsibilities. And so we're hoping also with EPI that this knowledge and awareness concerning the potential and the benefits that are the possible benefits in the future will become more aware throughout the organizations. But we've had strong supporters. We've had leaders. We haven't adopted anything, but we will have early adopters here, and that is something that I've seen within the project. We need to have this leadership, somebody who's willing to invest time, effort, resources to make a change.
Thank you. There have been a number of questions on the open source aspect of the project, which I think you've stated several times that your solution is open source. Maybe just to confirm, there's no licenses that are needed by anyone to implement it. And maybe there was a question on, open source is important, but what about another IP policy in terms of patent policy? What does PharmaLedger Association have in that regard?
From a technical point of view, everything what was developed in PharmaLedger, the whole blockchain the middleware, everything is open source. We also only used open source, means there is no license fee or anything else with that combined. In the future, that may change on top of it, but what we have now is complete open source. Also important is, there was also a question somewhere about license. It's all about under the MIT license. That means you can take the source code we have developed and you can build your own solution or your own ecosystem if you want. That keeps us also a little bit honest. That means we have to make sure that we are an attractive platform for members and making sure that we go in the right direction. I think that was also our intention, but important, it's open source. Everything we use is open source. There is no fees behind it. Yeah, that was always important for us because this is also comes with transparency, right? Everyone, if is interested, can look into the code, can look into it, what we do. There is no secrets.
Con, also, I would like maybe to add something to this part and to the question before, because when you were commenting about also endorsements and sponsorship, okay, a little bit from the pharmas, I think it's important in a project like this, if we want to give it sustainability, is the endorsements actually of the whole consortium. Because, I mean, all the agreements for the IPRs, for the license, as Marco had commented, and for having open source was an agreement for the whole consortium. That means not only academics, the SMEs had a lot to risk and a lot of effort, okay, and the big pharmas also got together to make the decisions to actually get and this. So we went through several steps of endorsements for the whole consortium. Actually, the whole consortium was agreed to this, okay. So we drove, okay, and to leave, okay, this kind of endorsements to actually make able to have it sustainable. For the future and as part of the PLA. I think when we talk about team sport also, it's not only about a teamwork, it was about problem solving all together and a process of working collaboratively, okay, as a group, okay, to achieve one common goal that we put all together and we all agreed with it. So I think that also was great during the project, and I think it has been a great achievement from project perspective in this area.
Thank you both. During the webinar, we got a couple of questions on the use cases, which I didn't address at the time, but as we still have a few minutes left, maybe I can come back to those. The first one was on falsified medicine, and I think it's quite a good question, although the person who asked it wasn't so sure. The question is basically, if I'm falsifying medicine, can I not just also falsify the box and the QR code and copy an existing QR code, and what's to stop me doing that, and how does your solution solve that particular problem?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, currently, I mean, I guess there's a lot of instances where actually authentic medicines have been, just the empty box has been used to resell counterfeits. So the idea is that with a scan of that data matrix, that there's 7 different checks that are performed. That includes that includes the batch number, the serial number, the expiry date, the combination that it has been, the product code. But it's also looking at the packaging itself, whether as a feature that is associate a technology feature. We had 3 different authentication feature providers participate in the project, collaborate on, and we're able to use the same app to authenticate the feature. The last part of the feature of the anti-counterfeiting or falsified medicines use case was something around data collaboration, where we can basically define rules that say, if the same product is showing up in 3 different cities within an hour of itself, if we're tracking this type of data, then we can determine that there's some trends or some issues with a specific product. If a specific product is identified as being counterfeited, and I know that there's some brands that have just been around for a decade or something like this, always the same one being thing. This can be automatically tagged so that the user gets a notification that this is likely a falsified medicine, and then can be asked to return to the pharmacy. But the last point, and I think this is the really powerful one, you have a ability here with a scan of it to also do a check against a traceability. So we had a finished goods traceability, which is looking at the product flow through the supply chain, not just on a specific pack. And with that, we can also check the product status. Has it been released to the market? Was it reported stolen? Should it have been destroyed 6 months ago? Is it in the right country? So this product status coming from the real-time traceability adds an additional layer of certainty. Mm-hmm. The idea, the medicine itself, there's not yet a sensor here that will guarantee the authenticity of the medicine itself in the pack. But we think with the number of number of checks, this increases the confidence, and also enables some larger activities or actions to be undertaken that address it.
Thanks, Dan. I guess that's the beauty of this blockchain solution, that you can integrate a lot of different pieces of information and make it really usable for the end user. Yeah. So maybe for you, Xenia, there's a couple on e-consent as well. I mean, I'm not sure if these were already addressed. So one question on the patient, can they revoke their consent at every individual piece of data, I guess? And will the researchers be made aware that some of the data they can use, some of the data they can't use? How is that going to work using the e-consent model?
Yes, actually, they can revoke the right to be forgotten. We even tested and validated it, okay? Actually, using the blockchain, okay? The information is always in the repository of the owners, okay? So actually what we do is we hash the data as such. So actually then since we don't have straight the data in the blockchain, let's say that way, we've been able to manage and to support, okay, the right to be forgotten, let's say, or to revoke the consent as such. And it would be through all the trial, and let's say if the person or the patient, they leaves the trial, that can be done. And for the second one, okay, how does it work? Okay, so actually, at any process of the trial, okay, or at any process or any research, let's say if it is used for secondary research, okay, either the dynamic consent, okay, the person and the researcher can see if the patient has pre-consented to their data to be reused, okay, or through the whole trial processes, okay, all the participants, okay, only can see the information that their status, let's say, depending if you are a CRA or you are the principal investigator, could be done, or also, okay, the data that is used or processed, it depends on the consent, and at all level, through the system, you can see the data that is consented to be used or not.
Great, thanks, Xenia. I think I've managed to address most of the questions in the chat. If there are any others, I'd ask you to put them in the chat now. And while you're doing that, maybe I'll have one more from my side, and this is particularly from an IHI side. As you know, PharmaLedger was funded under IMI, Innovative Medicines Initiative, where the industry partners are mostly the pharmaceutical industry. And now we've transitioned into IHI, Innovative Health Initiative, where industry partners involved not just pharmaceuticals, but also medtech, diagnostics, imaging, and so on. How would they perhaps engage with PharmaLedger? What would the benefit to them be of joining the PharmaLedger Association?
I can take a step. I mean, there are 7 use cases that the PharmaLedger project did. We evaluated, like Xenia said, 88 use cases, and came to this consensus of these 7. But we, I think, always knew that the number of potential use cases, that need trusted data exchange, it's probably there's hundreds or thousands of them. And so when we have passionate entities and individuals that are pursuing or have a great idea around a use case. That's, I think, what makes it happen. It is, and so that's one of the, we want to be the place where if you've got a great idea and you know, maybe have already done a little proof of concept or something like this and want to take it to the next step, that PharmaLedger would be the place to do it in the lab, you know, leveraging the existing network with the association, and accelerate its development. That's I think the value proposition in a nutshell.
Yeah, I also would like to comment, as Dan said, okay, the lab it allows this experimentation, but I think PharmaLedger is and would be created to have decentralized and trusted healthcare solutions by nature as such, which in my view is also needed if we want to move in the future, all of us in the area of healthcare to what is called healthcare 0.0. So that all really opens, like for example, in the use case we had IoT. So, and actually that opens a big possibility to companies like MedTech that either diagnostic images or devices or clinical devices to be integrated in the use cases and actually to move in a decentralized manner, even virtual remote services, okay, together with the pharmas. We think it's a big space, and this is an ecosystem, and actually all can be part of these stakeholders.
Great, thank you. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and we've maybe only got 5 minutes left, but perhaps there's a question on about have you liaised with standardization organizations such as ISO or IEC? I know you've talked about this, so maybe you could expand on that.
I think, you know, first and foremost, we've worked closely with GS1 throughout the project. We had GS1 on the advisory board, and also contributing to a couple of our different use cases. I mean, the whole goal there was to leverage the existing standards. So, I mean, it was, I think, kind of one of our principles not to reinvent the wheel, and to leverage existing standards to the max extent possible. So I think that's the GS1. Maybe Zenia, you could talk about HL7 or
Yes. In the clinical side and in the use cases that we did for the clinical trials, we were compliant with HL7. Actually, in our developments, we did adapters of data of legacy system to actually, when using them and reusing them, we were able to get it compliant with HL7. We decided at some point just to have this standard, as usually 80% of the hospitals are compliant also with this standard. So actually, we tried also to be standard oriented when we were developing the models for these use cases also.
Great, thank you. And maybe just on the last questions come through now, and I think what you've presented here is only a small taste of what you've produced. You showed all those use cases that you've worked on, and obviously we've only gone into detail of 2 of them. The question is this, you know, IMI projects are generally a little bit longer than 3 years, normally around 5 years. Yours is a relatively short project and also implemented during a global pandemic. So what was the secret? What was the maybe 2 or 3 secrets to your success? What made the project so successful?
You want to start?
Go. I just want.
Go.
We were fortunate, I think, very fortunate to have a, you know, pretty stable team from the very beginning. I remember the first meeting with you, Colm, back in first call back in 2018. I think we were but we were fortunate to have passionate people and a pretty stable team throughout, you know, in terms of the work packages and everything like that. I think that was one of the, and the other, when you mentioned pandemic, you know, with the pandemic, everything really became really in the forefront. All the existing processes and challenges that we have people running around with yellow, virus vaccination books and stuff like that back in 2020. All this became much more real and more to the forefront, and I think it made it a lot more urgent for us. Yeah.
Are you maybe from your side, Xenia?
On our side, I think as applicant consortium, not only we were, I think I mean, all the people was passionate as Dan said, but I think we all were very lucky in the sense that we were able to glue. We were able to put a consortium where the interest of all the people was very balanced. Okay, from the beginning. I mean, it was a little bit what we were using, but I mean, when you talk about a team, I mean, we were all going for a common goal. It was a big interest on the industry and on the farmers, okay, to develop and actually to see how this could work. Okay, I think the fact that it was also, I mean, 3 years it can be short, okay, regarding maybe other IMI projects, but I mean to have longer. Projects for a technology like it could be blockchain, okay, at the beginning, even we as applicants, we never foreseen to have a longer project when we did our proposal. We never thought at that point blockchain didn't know what was going to happen. So the idea was to really make it really wide, to made it really dynamic, and to really get to results. And I think one of the ideas is that when both teams were together, not only were able to glue and to put in common the interest, I think one of the issues that also happened is that we were all having the same interest, like not only in technologies, but also to get results done. And actually, all the agreements at that point also were easier, and actually were responsible for both sides. So actually, I think that was great from the project perspective and from all the teams, and we really thank all the people that participated in PharmaLedger. We had about 300 people participating. We had 30 partners at the end because we were able to have PLA as part of our consortium, but it was not, I mean, to manage and to have 300 people in the different areas, it is hard. It's a very, very big team. It's like a big company to be driven, and when we were all pointing to the same direction and the same objective, I think it made it really easy, and actually the patience and the willingness of the people to really go ahead was great in this project, sincerely.
So blockchain is clearly a team sport, an exciting team sport where everyone should get engaged in. So thanks very much. I think we'll finish there, bang on time actually. Just say, I mean, there's been a couple of questions people have asked about how to find out more. And so we've left this slide on the screen, so to encourage you to go to pharmaledger.org, a lot of information there. I would also maybe suggest that if you go to YouTube and type in PharmaLedger as well, you'll see the wealth of information that the project have produced, demonstrators, videos, explainers, etc., etc. There's a lot of information there. And of course, this webinar has been recorded, as I said at the top, and we will make this recording available on our website and on our YouTube channel, so you can view that later on as well. So I think it just remains for me to thank our three speakers. So obviously Xenia, Marco, and Dan. And there's been various thank yous in the chat as well. So thank you very much for making yourselves available for this. It's great to see the success of the project, and it's great to know that this success should be continued through PharmaLedger Association. So I'll say goodbye to all our audience, and we'll see you at the next IAHI Project Spotlight. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Just